what led you to writing the book, Polygamist Papers?
Well, the actual prompt for me to write the Polygamist Papers was one day I was reading. I took Dr. Laila Africa's his certification course to become a holistic health counselor, and I remember him mentioning polygamy, but he also has a book called African Holistic Health, and I remember that book and I believe it's Nutricide, which is another great book that he has. I saw it mentioned. I said, this is 2004, and I'm like, what in the world is polygyny? I'm like, maybe this is a typo. Maybe he's talking about polygamy. I've heard of polygamy, but I thought it was those Mormons and those Muslims. That's how I was thinking back then. Having a Christian background, I'm like, oh, that's just those Mormons and Muslims who do that. And I ended up doing a medical apprenticeship with a brother down here in the Atlanta area, and he was always talking about polygyny. And by that time, in 2004, I believe September 2004, I had bought Dr. Patricia Dixon Spears' book, We Want for Our Sisters, What We Want for Ourselves, African American Women Who Practice Polygyny by Consent. She wrote a book in 2004 with that title and updated it in 2009. And after I read that book, my eyes were opened. And I started, you know what, let me go back, I'm sorry. Earlier that year, I was studying the Torah, and I saw that Yahweh had not condemned polygamy in the scriptures, but in fact, he regulated it. And then I began reading Dr. Dixon's book. So her book was actually the first one that was written for popular consumption that I looked into. And I slowly but surely kept reading. I kept studying it over the next couple of years. And there was a brother from the Igbo tribes. He lives in California. He was dropping some gems about polygyny. This was in 2008. And the other brother, the elder here, he was always talking about it. And I'm looking at these guys like, man, these guys are really gung-ho about polygyny. I'm sort of like, man, like I'm missing something. So, I thought about it for a second. I said, because I'm a Christian, I grew up apostolic Pentecostal, still am. And I said, well, how come this isn't being taught? And I kept studying. I said, wait a minute, this isn't a pimp game. Most of the people practicing polygamy are not Mormon or Muslim in the world. And I said, these women are, for the most part, being cared for. I would say in a large capacity, and even monogamous families. And I said, okay, I'm going to start teaching this. So I just started testing the waters. I started telling some women who I was interested in. And what shocked me, Brother Haru, was that they didn't care. I mean, I was just telling them straight up, like, look, I believe in polygamy, and I'll probably have other women aside from you.
Right.
And, man, I'm telling you, it was mind-blowing. These women were like, well, thanks for telling me. I'm glad you told me up front. I don't mind being one of your women. And remember, this is just low-level, de facto polygamy type stuff. I didn't have an economy going on. I wasn't trying to build no economy. It was just, I was just dating, I guess, multiple women. And they didn't care. And these were American women, man. And I know some of the people who are going to be listening to this broadcast are like, yo, this is wild. In 2009, I really began teaching it in earnest. In 2010, I began teaching it in earnest June 2010. I and Brother Che Rakep Beniti, who wrote the book called The Book They Didn't Want You to Read, under the name Che Nazareth. You can find the book on Amazon.com. That brother recorded me talking nearly an hour about polygamy, and we posted that video in 4 parts on YouTube and Facebook. And by the time, we posted 2 at a time. We posted the first 2, and the second 2 parts we posted 2 weeks later. Man, I received almost 1,000 comments, inbox messages, and chat messages probably on Facebook within the first 2 to 3 weeks. There had to be at least 1,000. It was all day, man. I was spending all day having discussions with people about polygamy. It was 8 to 10 hours a day, literally, for the first 3 months after I posted that video, those videos. And the response was overwhelming. It was a lot of criticism. And I found that I had learned so much just at that point that people were like, man, you need to write a book, man. Like, you're answering a lot of questions that people are not answering, even the so-called polygamists. And I said, what are you talking about? I wasn't thinking about writing no book. And I came up with a title. I said, I'm going to call this the Polygamist Papers. And it started out as just like like literally 3 chapters, just answering questions. And it was going to originally be about 20 pages. And it was going to be in a MS Word. I'm sorry, it was going to be in MS Word format. And I kept just learning. I kept maturing. I kept learning, and I was always honest with women. They were open to it. Most were open to it, and I went through several courtships. It didn't pan out. I'm glad to say I'm married now. I have a consort now, and I have another one coming into the family. Potentially, she already considers herself part of the family. So, you know, I say that I have too. There's one more element here, though. About 2 years ago, I'd say the middle of 2011, you know, I thought about my childhood, and my mother was the second consort of a man who was another apostolic Pentecostal minister at the church we attended. And they dated, I guess you want to say, for like 15 years, man. I didn't think of it as polygamy. She never called it polygamy. She never taught me about polygamy. She never said anything about it. He never said anything about it. I just knew he used to come over to the house and take us out to dinner and pick us up for church. And, you know, it was looking back, I see now what it was, because he's always been a business owner. And I remember he owned a janitorial company, and my mom was the general manager of his company. And you and I have discussed this before, man. When we're interested in a woman, or when they choose us, when they're choosing, we put them to work. We want to see what they can do. Right. Because polygyny is about economics. And I see now what he was doing. But it wasn't official. It wasn't like, you know, my mom and other women were working together as a big family. It wasn't like that. But I caught a glimpse of polygyny. I caught a glimpse. And I said, wow, man. I was like, this is freaking amazing, man. This is one amazing strategy for family survival and for us to thrive. And of course, I'm learning now, being new to living it myself. And by this time, I think I've researched about 12,000 hours of primary research on polygyny. I've also lived with 4 polygynous families around the United States. So, it's been running deep, man, for about 2.5 years.